So what you're gonna need, obviously you're gonna need your sway bar links, the washers that came with them. I've already installed the other side just to make sure I had this down. You're going to need, for the Steeda one specifically, an 18mm and a 19mm wrench. I recommend also having a ratcheting. It'll just make it a lot easier, at least for the bottom one. The top one you kind of can't get into it real well with the ratcheting. You're gonna need grease and a grease gun for the Steedas. You're gonna need some sort of wrench or something to adjust your grease gun when you get to it, and a large ratchet for, okay, you need this ratchet with an 8mm. I do recommend the 1/4" drive with an adapter, and you're gonna need the extension to go with that. Well, you don't need the extension, but it'll help you protect your knuckles from your struts. This is a 19mm, which I need to take mine off. Mine are SR Performance. If yours are stock or some other brand, you might have a different size nut combination on there, and you might have, as you'll see when I take mine off, a different setup. So these are your standard ball type setups, ball joints. This is how the stocks are. So they've got the 8mm end here attached to the ball joint in there, which will spin freely, and your 18mm nut. This is pretty much how the stock setup is. As you'll see, the ones I take off are bolt-through solid sphericals. They're loud, clunky, and noisy. Probably awesome in a race capacity. This is my daily driver. It's really obnoxious and annoying, so I'm switching them out. Nothing against SR. They're great. They're great product. It's perfectly fine as far as quality goes, just not fit for a daily driver in my opinion. All right, let's get to work. If I can find a snazzy place to set the camera that you can see everything. All right. So as I pointed out, these are the SRs, and these are actually the SR bolts, but I got different nuts because the nuts that came with it were not locking, which is not a good idea for sway bar links. I don't know why they would design it that way. So you have to take these off before you can do anything. I forgot you may want a combination of deep well and shallow well. As you can see, this nut does come out, or the bolt does kind of come through there pretty far. Make sure you have your ratchet set the right direction. Don't be an idiot like me. So I'm putting the nuts and everything back on the SRs. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with them. I'm just replacing them because they're noisy. I may save them for someday for a track car, maybe sell them or something. I'm not really sure. Just not fit for a daily driver. Again, in my opinion, some people might not care. I'm one of those people that does. So before you install your new one, there's two things you want to do. You want to make sure that your new adjustables are set to the same length. Now they can sit like this, with one bolt going this way, one bolt going this way. These are actually pretty close. Are ready? So for the Steeda adjustables, your lock nuts are also 19s. You're going to loosen these up, and you want them to be about the same number of threads on both sides. Once you get them about the same, a little bit more. You're going to turn the middle part and push them out. A little bit more. A little bit more still. So once you get them on the car, they can also be adjusted. These little indents here are for an 18 millimeter. And again, your locking nuts are 19 millimeter. And also, again, that is specifically for the Steeda models, not other brands. That. Since they are adjustable on car, they don't have to be perfect. You can adjust them once you get them on the car. They're actually really easy to adjust. So are the SRs were also really easy to adjust. And if you're curious, yes, this job can be done without taking the tires off. Although having the tires off does make it tremendously easier. Once you get them to an acceptable length, go ahead and tighten your locking nuts. And you're going to want to grease them before you put them on. Because once you put them on, you're going to have one hell of a time getting a grease gun to it, unless you happen to have a flexible. I do not have a flexible grease thing. I used to, don't know what the hell happened to it. Wow. Okay. Make sure your Zerk fittings are also tight. I wasn't expecting that. Should actually be good now. Then wipe the grease off there and tighten up that Zerk fitting. So I've never gotten anything where the Zerk fittings weren't tight before. You just simply take your adjustable and tighten them up. Alright. This one either. So again, this is the first time I've ever had a Zerk fitting not be tight on a product I've bought, which is unusual. Steeda normally makes really good stuff. I have a Steeda sway bar. Really happy with them as a company. Excellent customer service, but apparently they don't tighten their Zerk fittings. All right. So you want to take the nuts off first, obviously, since they come already partially on. So the Steeda set came with 4 washers. I'm guessing that that's not one for each side, that's just for the bolt side. Which is kind of odd to me. I figured there'd be one for each side of it, but not what they sent, so that's what I'm doing. You notice these bolts do have the Teflon thread lock in there. It's very important. If for some reason you get bolts without the Teflon thread lock, go buy yourself new bolts. Or nuts, not bolts. It's been a long week. Tighten them as much by hand as you can, which won't be much. So I'm recommending, you need an 8mm. I'm recommending getting an adapter to 1/4 inch. Just for the extra strength and the extra length of the handle. And your 18mm. For this you're going to need a basic box end because most ratchetings simply are not going to fit in this space here. Okay, that's right. So when you're tightening the bolt, you actually want to set your ratchet to loosen because you're going backwards with the centerpiece. The other option, if you have them, is to use a ratchet and socket set with the bolt through holes. I do not have a set of those. As rarely as I would need them, I can't justify going out and getting them. This is where you want the ratcheting. Alright, so tighten them as tight as you can get them. Make sure your lock nuts are nice and tight. Alright, there you go. Put your tires back on, go for a spin. Oh, I guess maybe your lug nuts and stuff too, if you feel like not being reckless or some weird shit.